What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the No Fun League. Today, I'm joined by Professor George Diemer from Temple University. He is a sports economics professor who specializes in sports gambling and its implication on financial markets. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. I want to start out with when you first heard the Shohei Ohtani translator story break, what was your initial reaction?
Anxiety. I'm a big fan of sports. I'm a big fan of, I enjoy consuming sports through the lens of the gambling market. And I feel like it needs to be protected. And I'm always anxious about any scandal that comes around that are going to give proponents, or I should say, people that oppose this merger of sports and gambling. People that oppose that sort of thing, I don't want to give them ammunition because I do genuinely enjoy it and I do genuinely think that it's good for the sport. And so I get nervous. I feel like there's a better way to structure the gambling market and the sports world and how they interact. And when it's not done properly, and there's going to be a scandal that results because it's not done properly, then I get very anxious because I'm like, all right, now they're going to say, see, there shouldn't be any gambling, instead of saying, hey, look, maybe we can do this a little bit more efficiently.
Mhm. What I think was interesting about the Shohei situation and the Jonte Porter situation specifically is that because Shohei was in California, where gambling isn't like legal for sports books, and Jonte Porter was in Canada, where I don't know what the official declaration on that is, but for both of them, like for Shohei, it came out in one of the court reports that someone called his translator and said that we're looking at Shohei right now. He's walking his dog.
Yeah, I think
And
that the difference, there's a lot of differences between the
mhm,
two. The star magnitude is a big one because they really dove down into the details of the Otani one. Rightfully so, they should. They being the media. And also the nations, obviously, as you point out, where they were. In addition to that, the leagues have different policies, they have different rules. Some can do it on their property, they can't do it on other properties. It's very convoluted and it's always changing. So I think that it has to do with a lot of things. The star powers, the big one that gets into our face. But as you point out, rightfully so, the different nations and the different states, and also the different leagues, because there's not a uniform rule across sports of the do's and the don'ts. That's what a lot of people, myself, are calling for, but we unfortunately don't have right now.
if you were to structure that universal rule, how would you do it?
I would take the investigative authority out of the hands of the particular leagues and I would hand it to an independent agency. And the independent agency would, I would hope, be staffed with people that understand what they're looking for and understand how to find it, and have the authority and autonomy to run a proper investigation. I would model it a lot like the SEC is modeled, the Security and Exchange Commission. And there was a time in America where we felt like you couldn't invest money in the stock market and earn a fair rate of return unless you had inside information. And when people thought that that was the case, they took the money out of the stock market. This is in the late 1800s, early 1900s in America. And so the powers that be in America saw this, and it's called capitulation in the financial market, where they just take everything out. And when that happens, the market falls apart. Now, that's a serious, serious issue when it comes to the financial market. The financial market serves an important role. It allocates resources from where they're least valued to more highly valued. It creates wealth for everybody in America. So it has all these other implications to it that it might not translate to in the sports gambling world, but the principle is the same. You know, if you think Now, you can't earn a fair rate of return if you invest in Apple stock or Google stock or something like that. You're not going to buy them. And if you think that you can't win in a gamble and a wager, unless you have inside information, you're not going to bother putting money on it. We all see all the different wagers that are out there. If you have a sports book, you take a look at all the different opportunities to be able to bet. But nobody's betting on the wrestling, um, right? Nobody's doing that. Professional wrestling. Why? Because everybody knows it's scripted, right? The only question is, do you have the inside information? And if so, then you can take advantage of everybody else. Where's the fun in that? Nobody wants that. I mean, you might be able to find a trivial small amount you can throw it on here and there, but it's not a significant gambling market. And that's my fear that things are going to happen in sports where people are going to say, you know what? You can't win in gambling unless you had inside information. So I'm not going to bother doing it. Right. And so to combat that problem, that's an issue. Issues become problems if they're not resolved. And so that issue is resolved in the financial market through the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, established in the early 1900s. They can come in and they combat this issue. This is an issue in economics and finance called asymmetric information. And asymmetric information is when one side of a transaction has more information than the other. And in this case, it's called an adverse selection. The imbalance occurs prior to the transaction. You have inside information. You're going to take advantage of it. That's adverse selection. Well, the SEC has the independence and the power to go in and say, we want to know who had this information. What did you do with this information? Who did you tell this information to? Where did you get this information? They're able to have these investigations. And it's not tied to any corporation. It's not tied to any financial market. They're relatively independent. And it works well. Nothing's perfect in this world, right? But it serves the purpose. But today we think, yeah, hey, you go in the stock market and maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that. Nobody's thinking, oh, you have to have inside information in order to be able to make any money. So it served its purpose. I'd like to see something like that happen in America. That's not tied to the leagues. It's not tied to the Players Association in any way. They're independent organizations. They can come in, they can say, okay, you're the trainer of the Eagles. You knew that Carson Wentz was hurt. What did you do with that information? Who did you tell that information to? We want to get all this information. When did you have the information? When did you place this wager? Right. I want that independent agency to be around and be able to have a little bit of authority and autonomy. Does that answer your question?
Oh, 100%. And I think that's a really good idea. Like just in my head a little bit, I was thinking like you can take, or not even like from the leagues, but like take two or three people that specialize in each sport and use that to make that committee or organization and then go from there.
Yeah, you could do it easily. The problem is the leagues they all have an incentive not to do this, right? Because they
Hmm.
want power. They want the power to be able to run their own investigation and make their own decisions. And so they don't want to hand that power to somebody else. Um, but it would be easy. I mean, you have to get people that understand the financial markets, that understand the gambling markets, that understand how to run an investigation. It's an odd kind of skill set, but you'd have to
Hmm.
find the right people and then know where to look to find the suspicious patterns. Um, and they would have to hand the power, somehow it had to be funded. So the
Hmm.
SEC is funded by the federal government. I don't know. I can't imagine that the federal government's going to end up funding this independent agency, whatever it is. I mean, there's a lot of problems. Probably
Oh,
the
for
biggest
sure.
of which is that the leagues wouldn't want it happening.
Hmm.
So you'd have to force it on them somehow. But it would be easy for them to just say, you know what, let's just kick in a couple bucks
Yeah.
and we'll let them handle it and whatever they want to do is fine. And here's all the things that they could do. They can ban the players, they can try to depose other players or whatever. I don't know.
Hmm. Oh, no, for sure. That is a much better system than what we have right now.
Mhm.
Um, were you surprised that the NFL, like itself, leaned in so much to the idea of a script? and like went so
Oh,
far with that joke.
which joke is that?
Oh, so the NFL realized, like, everyone's like, oh, this is scripted. And they literally before last season started, the commercial for the season started out with everybody at a table read.
Oh,
And
I
then
missed that.
they went along with it, and then, the people weren't happy. There's a specific section of people
Mm,
that were very upset that 40 seconds of a 3 hour game panned the camera to Taylor Swift. The Chiefs end up winning the
yeah.
Super Bowl.
Uh,
Like
uh,
they,
I don't know. I don't see how it hurts anything. So,
I mean, it was a great
I think it's nice.
commercial.
I think it's fun to live in a world where you can joke around about that because it shows that it's not too taken too seriously, I guess. At
Hmm.
least most people aren't taking it too seriously. I haven't heard about it. And certainly I follow sports quite a bit. And so I think that's a good sign that maybe it's not so well, I should maybe not be so concerned about it if people were making jokes about it and I didn't even hear about it. So
Yeah, no,
I'm surprised my students didn't tell me about that.
it's a phenomenal commercial, but I don't know. It's like you don't want to play with fate too much,
Yeah.
and
It might come
then
back to haunt them someday.
oh,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Especially with we've seen the NFL is not the best at dealing with any scandal or anything like that
They
ever.
have such large roster sizes. I think it's really tough for them to keep a close eye on everybody between the roster sizes being so large and the all the staff and the trainers. It's really tough to keep a close eye on them.
No, that's and I don't think people talk about that enough. Like you use the analogy with the trainer. People don't talk about how many people are in a building of any organization, but especially the NFL, and they are all privy to information and they can use
Yeah.
that in nefarious ways if they want to.
Yeah. And there's two different ways that you can combat this. One of them is the way that we're talking about. Try to figure out from the sources and make sure that the players understand the rules and what they can and can't do, and then monitor them and make sure that they're playing by the rules. And that's one way that I'm not an expert in. The other way that I'm relatively done some research on, so I'm relatively more familiar with, is let's look at the markets and try to find some of these suspicious betting patterns, figure out if something was going to happen, what it would look like, and let's see if the evidence suggests that maybe that is happening. Right. So that's as an academic what my background is. I'm like, huh, hypothetically speaking, if there was like if people were flipping a coin before the game and hey, heads I win, or I cover, I should say, heads I cover, tails you cover, and that happened prior to every game, what would the game outcomes look like? And is there any evidence that this is happening? And that sort of thing. So I
Hmm.
guess there's two ways of going about it. One is at the source, and the other is what the implications of the betting patterns look like.
That's why it was cool with the Jonte Porter situation. Like DraftKings knew something was up immediately because people were betting thousands of dollars on a role player that no one had heard of before.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Temple University had some very suspicious things happening with the basketball team, and it was the same thing. They saw the betting patterns, and they saw the line moving. They knew that that's not right. They saw it moving in certain directions, and and you know that's one way of detecting it, I guess.
Hmm. Was there? Honestly had completely forgotten about that story even happening
Yeah,
because literally the week after they went on an almost Cinderella run in the
yeah,
AAC
right.
tournament, they
It
were
was like,
very
oh
close
no,
to.
now we gotta win it all to show them we weren't cheating.
But
But yeah,
what was the end result of that? And was
I
there
don't
any?
know. I
Okay.
I couldn't even tell you. I know that the last I heard was that they were going to investigate it, and somebody went off to investigate it, and I haven't heard anything since. Maybe there was a finding. It
Hmm.
wasn't. I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Um, do you foresee more scandals happening? because of the inability for them to like let go of their egos and establish an independent commission.
So by them, I assume you mean the leagues.
Yeah.
I do see it happening, continuing, unfortunately, because I'm an economist, and economists are trained to respect the fact that people respond to incentives, and there's an incentive for them to do it. And as so long as there's an incentive for people to shave points or to cheat in gambling and taking advantage of inside information, then they're going to do it. And you have to. There's not a proper punishment in place to try to combat it. And it's so yeah, I feel like probably going to last, unfortunately.
Hmm. And I know that we talked about this last time that we spoke about the ability to influence college kids, especially even with NIL in place. There's still someone that's, especially in football, that's playing a couple of minutes that can impact a game that
Yeah.
is probably isn't making money. So, a few states have already banned player props for college players, and the president of the NCAA called for banning that, which, one of the first times that the NCAA has probably had a good idea. But what are what are your
Uh,
thoughts on that, and do you think that that should happen?
I do not like player prop bets. I love gambling. I always have. Um, Never had a problem with it in terms of like it being a part of the game. I think it's healthy for the game. The revenue that's coming in is really good. I don't think you'll ever find anybody that's a stronger proponent of gambling and sports than me. And I'm telling you, I hate prop bets. I wish that they would ban them. I don't like them. I think there's too strong of an incentive to for more corruption, as you pointed out. Um, there's no reason to suggest that if a unilateral ban on prop bets would significantly diminish gambling in any way. People that, it's basically people, hey, let me see what I can put money on. It's not like, oh, I can't put prop bets on, forget it, I'm not going to put money on it. So I don't think it's a game theory, prisoner's dilemma type of thing. If you
Hmm.
unilaterally ban it in the markets, I don't think the markets are going to be hurt by it in any way. Although they might individually say, oh no, one state to another state, it might complicate things. But if it's just a unilateral ban, I think that would be healthy. I don't think it would hurt the gambling industry. The gambling industry is growing exponentially, so it's not no problem there. Um, and it just invites corruption. And I don't like it. So I would like to see prop bets gone for good, for all sports, but especially for college athletics, where we
Hmm.
try to keep a little bit of a closer eye on the integrity associated with the gambling markets, because as you said, they're not professionals, um, and um, and it's pretty difficult for a kid that's not making any money to walk into practice, and they got to pass like three Mercedes Benz for the third assistant coach that's
Hmm.
making $500,000 a year for doing nothing,
Hmm.
and they're the ones that are generating the revenue, and they don't get anything, and they got to work their tail off day in day night, and they're generating the revenue, and the coach that's making how much money isn't. I see a lot of hypocrisy in saying, oh well, you are the one that has to protect the game, and you have to do it
Hmm.
this and you have to do it that way. There's just so much temptation going on. So I'd like to see more protection, starting with the college, certainly. But I would actually call for it in the professional leagues as well.
Interesting. I don't know if you watched it, but the HBO did a documentary called Student Athlete,
Oh no, I didn't see
and
that.
it's been a while. Like my mom had it on TV, like probably 2017, 2018,
Oh,
and
okay.
I was bored, so I like walked into the room and I was like, "Oh, cool." And it followed around a few athletes who are like playing for big schools and are homeless or like have nothing while their
Yeah.
schools are making billions of dollars. And that's why I think NIL is awesome, but I also think that needs a lot of regulation in place as well because there's so much room for corruption to happen there that
Yeah, I
they
have an
don't.
odd view of things when it comes to this. I'm a bit of an oddball.
Mhm.
So I'm an economist, and a lot of people, this was like taboo, absolutely taboo years ago when I started teaching. I tell my class, I teach sports economics for 20 years. So when I was teaching sports economics 20 years ago, they'd be like, oh, when I come into class and I say something like this. But I mean, I think that whoever's generating the revenue should earn the money. And it's plain and simple. It's very clear cut. And there's a lot of problems associated with that, with just implementing that overnight, right? There's a
Hmm.
lot of Title IX implications. There's a lot of other issues that you would have to deal with. But that's what I think. And the college athletes are generating revenue. They should get the money. NIL is, I guess it's a step in the right direction in a lot of ways, but it's really born out of the Supreme Court decisions, especially the
Hmm.
Eddie O'Bannon case, saying that he was entitled to NIL compensation for on in the video games, EA Sports,
Hmm.
and that set a precedent in the courts, and everybody knew in college and in law and politicians, they all knew that at that point moving forward, that they were going to have to compensate at least NIL. And so that's why so the NCAA's coming into this kicking and screaming and fighting every step of the way. And basically, when they're saying, all right, the lawyers are saying, look, you're going to have to pay them NIL. You might as well just give them NIL and that's it.
Hmm.
And then maybe stop the whole wave of pay the college athletes. And I wish that wave was still pressuring the NCAA because I think they deserve more than NIL. I think
Oh,
that they deserve.
100%.
I think they should be paid like an employee.
Hmm.
I'm an employee of Temple University. They give me a contract. I'm allowed to go to school for free. It's in my contract. If I want to go back and get another degree or something like that, or my family members or something like that, I can go. Why can't they have a similar stipulation in their contract? Hey, you're getting paid X amount of money. You know, this is what our expectations are for you to fulfill your job. And oh, and by the way, if you want to go to school for free, then you can.
Hmm.
I, I don't understand why that can't be the same. I understand why the NCAA doesn't want it to be that way, right? Because they don't want to have to pay them. And they also are concerned about workmen's compensation issues, another legal issue that I won't bore you with, but there are other issues that prop up. There's Title IX issues. There's a lot of issues to
Hmm.
doing that. But I'm an economist and I think about the world in terms of efficiency. And I think that like people talk about, oh, these people are getting exploited, those people are getting exploited. To me, if you're generating revenue and you're not making that money, you're being exploited. It's pretty
Oh,
simple as far as I'm
100%.
concerned. And so for me, most of the time, 9 times out of 10, I'm like, yeah, that's not really exploitation. I don't think that's really exploitation. And here it is. And I'm like, hey, that's exploitation right there. I mean, come on. So that's my opinion. I like to see them just pay the athletes. Just go ahead,
Hmm.
call them employees instead of student athletes. Get rid of the word
Like,
student athlete. Call them employees. And, then there's a lot of issues that pop up. My students, we talk about it in class. They're like, oh, what about this and what about that? And it's kind of interesting conversations. They'll say, well, then you can have anybody be the employee. All right. Like Allen
hmm.
Iverson, come on back and play in the Leah Chorus Center. How cool would that be? It'd be awesome. Right. But then again, I don't want Allen Iverson not to show up in my class and not to come to my
Hmm.
exams. And so maybe me failing him, I don't want that to be tied to his employee, status.
Hmm.
So you kind of take that, separate those two. I don't know. There's a
I
lot of
mean,
fun things you can think about from there.
there's there are like 28-year-olds that are playing college
Yeah.
sports right now because
I
of
mean, I think it'd be awesome. I mean, if Allen Iverson retires, who would be hurt by Temple saying, "Hey, you want to come back
it
and
would be
play in the
so
city of
fun.
Philadelphia? Come on to come on down to the Leah Core Center and play every once in a while. Come on. I mean, Temple would benefit. AI would benefit because he'd be able to have some fun. If he didn't benefit, he wouldn't sign the contract, right? So
There
he's
could
benefiting,
be
and the city would love it. So I mean, it'd be
you
cool,
could
awesome.
you could also I'm just spitballing off the top of my head, but there's so many people that go back to school and there's so
Yeah,
many athletes that go back to school after they retire
Yeah.
So not for football because that's still a contact sport. So I don't think anybody wants to do that when they're like 50 or 60.
Yeah,
But
especially
you
with
know,
concussion issues. Yeah,
oh
I
yeah.
agree with that. Yeah.
But for something like basketball or even golf, like J.R. Smith went back to school and was on the golf team for I forget which school it was, but it was an HBCU. And you could just establish a separate division,
Yeah. Why not?
and
Yeah.
that would, and they could have their own tournaments and games against each other. That would be so fun.
Oh, it'd be so much fun. I mean, imagine being a young athlete and like, all right, I'm going to go to school for a year or two, and then I'm going to go pros, and then I'll come back and I'll finish my degree for a year or two, maybe even go to graduate school. I mean, that's a great path. And
Yeah,
who's hurt by that? I mean, maybe the
yeah.
kids that aren't going to be on the roster anymore, you can make an argument for that, but I have a tough time thinking
But
of
you could
anybody else that's going to
also,
be impacted.
expand rosters a little bit. It's not like
Yeah,
Division 1 schools are hurting for money.
yeah, that makes sense. And there's going to be a lot more money coming in, and you pay the athletes, they'll be happy. So
Yeah.
I could see it
Um.
working, but they're not, I don't think they're going to give me the authority to be able to make these decisions anytime soon. But boy, it would be fun if they did.
Oh. Oh, 100%. I think just based off of this, all of our conversations, you should have some authority to make these decisions because the ideas are phenomenal. And
They don't let economists in these decision makings, I don't think.
I mean, I feel like if they did, the world would be a lot better.
So do
But
I, but I'm biased.
I mean, the two economists that I've talked to extensively are you and Dr. Leeds, and
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like both of you should be more in charge of decision making. But speaking of NIL, I'm so happy that it happened, so I get another college football video game. I'm
Yeah, it's
so
I hope they
excited.
don't screw it up like Madden.
If
Um,
if they do, EA is going to go bankrupt.
well, it's the problem is that they have a monopoly. And what they should do is get rid of the monopoly. When I was young, video games were like the coolest way to learn the sport. Like I learned the sport of football, playing a little bit of football, but I learned like hockey, playing hockey, line shifts, things like that. Playing video games, which is really, an awesome, obviously you're competitive, you're friends, and you start getting the hang and the rules and the flow of the game, which is really what we all
Hmm.
sports enthusiasts love so much is the flow. And you get the flow, you get that in video games. But then the NFL decided that they were going to sign exclusive deals to EA, and they get a monopoly. And monopolies are big, fat, slow to adapt, and I mean, they spend more money trying to convince you that it's a great game than actually making it a good game.
Hmm.
And so until they get rid of the monopoly status rights that EA enjoys, it's unfortunately not going to get it any better in any significant way. There needs to be good, healthy competition.
Hmm.
And it's so short-sighted of the leagues because the leagues could use video games to teach this really, especially in the NFL, this really complicated sport for foreigners. Teach it to them in a fun, inexpensive way, because that's the other beauty of competition. It's going to drop the price. Madden's
Yeah.
ridiculously priced. It's the same product. It doesn't cost them that much to make it. All they're doing is taking money from the licensing, handing it over to the NFL, and it's short-sighted because the NFL could
Hmm.
say, "Oh, wow, this is a way to teach young generations this game and get them into it and get them involved and excited about it." And
Hmm.
instead, they just see a short cash grab, and it's short-sighted, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree 100%. That's
Now,
literally.
have you seen the new college game?
I have watched every trailer that's come out. It looks very, very good.
It's only trailer. Anybody playing any betas or anything like that yet?
So everybody that's played beta, so what EA does is like specific creators that like play video games for a living, basically, they bring them out to test it out.
Hmm.
Like they fly them out to Orlando and everything like that. So even all of them have said like we had high expectations, but like it met them and was even better.
Oh yeah,
So
nice.
the potential for disappointment is very high. I you know, all my friends that play non-sports video games are like, why are you spending $70 on the same game every year? I'm like, you kind of have to. And what you're saying about like someone not from the US learning a game through
Yeah.
video games, that's what happened with me.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
moved here from India when I was 5. My parents bought me a PlayStation 2 when I was 6 or 7,
Uh-huh.
and ESPN 2K5 was one of the games that they got me, and I had no clue what I was doing. I had no clue how to
Yeah.
like even pick a team, and that's just like how I self-taught myself
Yeah.
football in a way, and just like I'm very grateful for my parents because they are into like every sport. So now I'm that
Yeah.
way. So now I
That's
just,
nice.
when they yell at me for watching sports all day, I'm like, this is not my fault. This is all because of you. But I I fully agree with that. Now, even Madden, like the stuff that's come out for Madden in the new trailer, that
Yeah.
looks a lot better too. And it looks like they're trying again because
It
I think
always
it
looks
was,
a little better. The problem
it
is when you
does,
buy it and
but
you realize it's the same.
I agree. But like changes that are like actual changes, like they have 3 announcer teams for Madden now instead of just like the one generic one, which, is born out of because like they need to make Madden better because no one's going to buy Madden. They're just going to play the college game. And
Yeah, maybe that would be the
that'll drive
competition.
down revenue
Yeah.
for Madden. So they have to like they kind of created a competition within their own company in a way.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd like to see the license go to everybody that wants it. They used to have like 3 or 4 really good football games every year. Um and it was great. And but they interacted differently. Like you had to get used to it. Oh, this one
Hmm.
the X does this and it the camera goes this way when you point it that way. So it was all a little bit different. Some were more pass focused, some rush focused, stuff like
Hmm.
that. Um, but it was good. It was good because it created the game, it made it much better. The games that they were playing, they had cool, interesting ideas, and
That
now it just
the issue with Madden is that the NFL restricts what the video game can do. So like the NBA game, like 2K, it's also not like the best. Like a lot of the people that have played it their whole lives are like, okay, it's starting to get really bad now. But at least it like lets you relocate teams to like different cities every year, and like you can like create a team from scratch, which I
yeah,
think that they're adding to Madden now. Like they're adding Team Builder to Madden, that you can just like create a team, like uniforms and everything. But the NFL itself puts a lot of restrictions. Also, like very little things. Like if your team is doing bad in franchise mode, there should be less fans there.
yeah.
But the NFL doesn't let that happen because no owner wants to see their stadium in a video game like half empty.
Yeah, for me, I just want to like a game that I can like I have 2 daughters, so like sit down, grab my daughter, hey, you want to play a video game? I'll teach you how to play, this
Yeah.
is the raw, this is how you do a pass. And so this is what a
Hmm.
play action is, and this is how it's supposed to work, and this is how a linebacker moves and stuff like that. So I would like to get that.
Yeah.
And that just was really pretty bad last time I broke down and bought a Madden. I was like, this is the worst game than it was 20 years ago. This is
Oh,
awful.
sure. What I'm excited to say is EA lost the license with FIFA for soccer video games. So they came out with one this year. They called it EAFC.
Hmm.
And 2K might get the license for FIFA and make a competing game.
Hmm.
And maybe that happens in time for the World Cup and they have the World Cup and the EA game doesn't,
Hmm.
which would be very interesting.
I want to see everybody getting licenses. I'd like to see our courts say that's illegal. You can't because it hurts the consumer. And that's the way the courts are supposed to rule.
Hmm.
And in this case, for some reason, they haven't limited antitrust exception. I guess it's born out of that, but it's unfortunate, in my opinion.
Yeah, the U.S. Supreme Court right now is that's a, that's a
Well, this we're talking about rulings from the early 1900s that set the precedent.
even that is super cool because like the NFL played a Black Friday game that started at 3:30, and the only reason that happened is because the antitrust rule with college and high school games that they can't play a game on a week besides Sunday before 3 o'clock.
Yeah, that was the deal that they cut to get the Sports Broadcasting Act of 68. So they cut a deal with Congress and said, listen, we want to be able to collectively negotiate. We want this thing called the NFL to try to get television rights. And Congress said, yeah, but then you're going to just destroy college and high school football. And they said, no, 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 no. We promise we'll never compete with them. And so, yeah, I was born out of that negotiating.
Hmm.
Mm.
I want to switch gears a little bit. We talked about some pretty heavy stuff in the beginning with scandals. So I want to talk
Mhm.
about, video games are fun, something just as fun. What is your gambling philosophy?
Well, personally,
Yeah.
I don't gamble much. I have a wife and I don't have very much money. She handles all the my wife Barbara, she knew me when I was an undergrad and I had three TVs in my living room. And my buddies and I would watch every football game, college, pros, and we had, a direct line to our bookie and we made our own money and spent it the way we wanted to, and that was that. And she was like, "You will not be handling our finances." So I said, "All right." So when I'm a good boy, she'll give me a little allowance and I can play with it just a little bit because I do, like I've realized that if I have $1,000 a game or $10 on the game, it's all about like the percentage of the pot that I'm kind of playing around with to me. So I don't spend any money really, very small amount. And the only reasons why I still kind of do it is because I want to understand the market. I want to
Hmm.
understand what's happening in the market. I think it's important if you're a researcher to kind of just play around with it just a little bit. And especially for like, here's the big game, it's coming up. What's the line doing? Is it moving in this way? Is it moving in that way? Plus, I teach a sports book management course at Temple. So every once in a while. So I kind of want to stay on top of things. And I teach sports analytics as well, which we get into it. So I kind of play around with a little bit with that in mind. But I, in the past, I've built my own model. When I was serious about it, then I took it very
Hmm.
seriously. So when I was serious, I built my own model. I tried to figure out my own point spread for the games, what I would do using regression analysis, OLS, and basically come up with my own numbers. And then I tracked to figure out how those numbers deviated from the posted numbers and figured out how the results of gambling on those games would be and whether I would be able to win over the commission that you have to pay 10% on your losses. So that comes out to 52.4% of the time you have to win in a standard wager. That is the baseline. And then you kind of move around a little bit from the baseline. And moving around a little bit in the baseline could mean a lot of things. Could mean knowing if the point guard is a free agent and he's trying to run the score up, knowing if um, there's a big market, small market bias. Track. I've seen some strategies that are successful in beating the market and over the years. That basically is in the research. Most of it's in the research. Tracking jet lag from east to west to east. West to east apparently is more significant. When they get home, then the markets oftentimes will take into consideration the fact that they're at home and they'll give them a home court advantage, even though they're still jet lagged and maybe they shouldn't have any sort of home court advantage, things like that. I've seen some interesting stuff with Twitter hashtags where they try to figure out basically the idea is you go with the sharps versus the Joes. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Basically, figuring out who the sharp betters are, and then basically following them. So some people took a look at Twitter hashtags and said, well, in this particular game, the Twitter hashtags are this much higher for the Eagles. Well, that must mean the public is betting on the Eagles and the sharps are betting on the other. So
Hmm.
then let's bet the other. And they actually came up with a winning strategy doing that. So there's a few here and there where you study enough and you kind of get a feel for it.
Hmm.
Is the line moving? Is that an efficient thing? Is it moving towards or away from efficiency? Things like that. So, so you get a baseline and then you figure out how to deviate. Also, I've heard of a lot of success of steaming. Are you familiar with steaming?
No.
So steaming is when you can take two. All right, so let's say you have an account with two different accounts,
Mhm.
DraftKings and FanDuel. And one of them has the Eagles at -5, the other one has the Eagles at -6. Well, you can bet on opposite way sides, and well, let's say it's 5 and 7.
Mhm.
Okay, that's 5 points and 7 points. You can bet on one side in one sports book, the other on the other sports book, and hope that it lands right in the middle, and you steam them. So there's strategy, and actually, I know a student of mine had a lot of success doing that. Um, he had it down to a science. It was interesting. He had multiple sports books, obviously. He had an app that tracked all the success that was having in each sport, with each league, with each sports book, with each league, with each type of wager, everything you can imagine. And he said that he was doing pretty well. I believed him, so you never know.
Yeah.
Somebody's telling you the truth, but I believed him. Not all my students are trustworthy. He was a trustworthy one, in my opinion. Sometimes people tell you stories and you're like, okay, you study the gambling market, you hear a lot of interesting things. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way. Some of your sources, you're like, okay, okay, but some of them you're like, oh yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. So that made sense to me. So you just pick up little things like that. If I
Mhm.
wanted to get serious, I think I could. I'm not so sure my wife would let me, but if I wanted to get serious about gambling, I think I could think of some interesting ways of doing it.
Mhm. I was very fascinated to think about it from a much deeper level than even like me. Like I think I'm in the positive on every sports book that I've ever used and overall. But that's also because like if I bet anything more than $5 on something, I get very anxious. So it's
Yeah,
like $5 and less, like 20 leg parlay, and just ride it out and have a good time.
that's the key. I mean, just enjoy it. I've been in this long enough. I've been doing this since I defended my dissertation of '08. So I've been doing this a long time, and my dissertation was on gambling on the NFL games.
Hmm.
So I've been doing this for a long time, and the market is incredibly efficient, and it is very humbling. It will humble you. So, like, my first advice is don't try to beat the market. I had a graduate student, oh, I think this and I think that. I said, I guarantee you, you will find that you will not be able to beat the market. And I said, he did an entire project on it and went and presented it. And by the end of the semester, he said, yeah, you were right. There's no way that you can beat the market. And I said, it's surprisingly difficult. And it's much energy that you put into it. By the time you even start to exploit any sort of inefficiency, you need so much capital to take advantage of it that it's
Hmm.
very difficult. And a lot of people will get burned out from it. I know I was getting burned out trying to chase an inefficiency here and an inefficiency there. So I said, all right, that's it. I'm just going to kind of enjoy it, like you're saying. Small stakes. Just I every year I get Embiid as my. It's so frustrating. I get excited about Embiid. I start, oh, maybe I'll put $5 on the Sixers tonight, and then the Sixers, and then he breaks my heart in the playoffs. Um, but I can't help it because I'm a Sixers fan. I love the Sixers, and I refuse to not enjoy Embiid in his prime years while I'm here, while he's here. So I buy into it every year, but it just has to be a small amount of money, like you're saying.
Hmm.
Um, I know that the student that was having some success, the sports books knew. And I have a friend of mine that works at sports books, and he says they're monitoring you, they're tracking you. They know if you are sharp, and if you look like it and smell like a sharp, they're going to throttle you. They're going to restrict your maximum bets, and it's going to restrict how much you can take them for. So even under best case scenario, you're going to have logistical issues of actually making enough money off of this inefficiency.
Hmm. I my best gambling story is during March Madness this year, Elite Eight. I put down in parlay for all the games, but I was going to Boston to hang out with my cousins that weekend, so I completely forgot that that parlay existed.
And
So
you were out of state, so you couldn't look at your
exactly.
phone.
So
Yeah.
I was I was good. I mean, it's legal in Massachusetts, but like I wasn't paying attention because I was like running around Boston for a weekend. And a
They wouldn't
month
let you
later,
anyway. I don't think they'd let you anyway.
no, it lets you just like register, you just like agree to the terms and conditions of Massachusetts and like it transfers everything over in like 30
Oh,
seconds.
does it? I didn't know you could
Yeah.
transfer. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
It's very easy actually.
That's news to me. I thought the Wire Act prohibited any of that money going between different states.
I don't think so because like even because I live in New Jersey, I went to school at Temple, so I'd be on the train coming back home. And I remember one time 2 years ago, I wanted to bet on Princeton because they were going on a Cinderella run, and I realized that I wanted to do it after crossing into Jersey state lines, and Jersey doesn't let you bet on Jersey college teams, so I
Oh
wasn't
yeah.
able to do it.
Huh.
And
Interesting.
very quickly, if they're like really near the border, then like you just like it can't like figure out your location, so you can't really use the app. But a month later, and this was on FanDuel, and it was like the last $3 that I had, so like I didn't really go on FanDuel either. So a month later, almost NFL draft time, and ESPN Bet, which is an awful app by the way, didn't um didn't have what I wanted to bet on. Like they didn't have it as an option. So I go on to FanDuel and I see $1,100 in my FanDuel account.
Ooh,
And I was like,
wow.
huh? So
Off of
that
$3?
yeah,
Oh my goodness.
I'm gonna
That's
I'm gonna
amazing.
find it.
That's a great
Oh,
story.
it was so funny. It was
Oh.
actually so much fun. And like I literally I was in bed. It's like 11. I literally like sprint around my house. I'm like, yeah, it was an 8 leg parlay, so Sweet 16. Clemson, UConn, Alabama, Illinois, North Carolina State, Purdue, Duke, and Tennessee. $3 to win 1,100.
Wow.
And like I didn't even realize. It literally a month later, I was like, this is it was so funny.
That's
But
great.
no, I think what would you oh, speaking of the Sixers, what did you think of the draft pick yesterday?
I didn't even see it. It was a guard from Duke.
Hmm.
He sounded like he was happy to come here, so that sounds pretty good. Um, yeah, I don't know much about it. What do you think? You probably know more than me.
Okay. If he plays well, everybody's gonna love him. If he does not play well, he's gonna get so much hate
Yeah,
because he's
Philly.
like, oh, not even just like Philly, but like he is a very Gen Z
Oh,
individual.
ah,
Paints his nails. So once again, a specific demographic is just gonna hate him based off of that.
uh-huh.
And then is already like a massive internet star
Oh,
because
interesting.
he's a very good singer.
Oh yeah.
So he
Huh.
went viral on TikTok, and then he had a really good March Madness tournament. So like that exploded his
Huh.
personality and like TikToks and everything even more. But I think he's a really good player. I think he's gonna fit well with Terry Maxey.
I'll tell you what, now you should be paying attention to right now is the Flyers. They are going to be sensational next year. They got a guy, Mitch Cobb. They just announced that he's coming here next year. Do you know much about hockey?
I This was my first year really paying attention to like hockey playoffs like the entire time, not just a couple games here and
Yeah.
there.
Well, I think that they're going to be. I think they're going to make the playoffs next year, and they might be really something special with this guy, Mitch Cobb. We got him last year, and with the seventh pick, he dropped to us because nobody thought that he'd be able to play out of Russia. He probably would have been the
Hmm.
first or second pick in the draft. And he slipped to us, and we have good relations with the Russian leagues, and we somehow got him over here. And everybody thought it would take like another 2, 3 years, best case scenario. And we got him over here, and he's going to be sensational.
That's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. Game 7 a couple days ago was so much fun. I think I'm bought into hockey now.
I love hockey, nothing like it, especially live. That's my favorite to watch live.
Yeah, I went to my one of my best friends is a huge hockey fan, so his mom got him Rangers Flyers tickets for
Oh,
Christmas
nice,
because
nice.
he's a Rangers fan.
Oh,
And she texted me one night and she's like, "Oh, do you want to go to this game?" I was like, "Yeah, I won't say no to a live game
Yeah.
tickets. So I went and he went into overtime.
Oh,
It was so much fun.
yeah. I love hockey. Love it.
It's a very fun sport. I've One of the companies that my dad used to work with, they had like center, not even center. It was like right next to the Rangers tunnel. They
Hmm.
had season tickets. So I went to one game because one of the people that worked there, they were over for dinner. I was like, oh yeah, I've never been, like, hockey's like the one sport that I've never been to. So they sent us tickets, and I got to like high five Henrik Lundqvist. Like, we were like right
Oh,
next to the.
nice.
It was so much fun,
Nice.
but I still think I think hockey is really fun live because it's hard to watch on TV
Yeah.
because the puck is very hard to find sometimes if you're not like fully paying attention.
Yeah, the puck's hard to
But
find, and a lot of the line shifts are happening behind the scenes. If you get to know hockey a lot, then you kind of, all right, they're doing a line shift, I'm sure.
Mhm.
So maybe the wave's not going to come, or maybe they just did a line shift. Now the wave's going to be right behind them. This is going to be exciting. Like you get a little bit better feel for it that way. But yeah, it's tough to watch on TV.
which is surprising because I think a lot of other sports are more fun to watch on TV, and then you just go to the game for like the ambiance and
Yeah,
the environment. 'Cause, like, football's way easier to watch on TV than it is at the stadium.
football translates really well on TV. Yeah,
It's phenomenal TV. Basketball I think is good either way.
yeah, and baseball, the atmosphere being there feels good, but really, I think television brings out the
So
excitement.
for me, because I didn't watch baseball till I got to Temple.
Hmm.
And so I didn't really have like a baseball team, and then I had a bunch of friends that were Phillies fans. So I was like, uh, I'm just gonna root for them. And then they
Yeah.
started playing really well. But I have a lot. I have a hard time watching baseball on TV for the sole reason that it is a slower paced game. It's still very entertaining. Like, if it's a playoff game, then obviously I'll be anxious
Right.
and I'll be watching. But I think like going to baseball games is so much fun because the entry level is so much lower than every other game, and then
Yeah.
you can, like, if it's a really good date idea because you can talk because
Yeah.
there's a lot of breaks, or you can
Plenty of
just like
time to
go with
just
your
hang
friends
out.
and just hang
Hmm.
out and have a good time. Plus, Citizens Bank Park is awesome,
Yeah.
and it's very fun to
They
just
they
walk
made
around
some
there.
good changes last year. They quickened the pace of play, and
Oh, it's so much more
did
fun now.
really good. Yeah, it did a lot for the game. Yeah.
No, it's very fun to go to baseball games, especially in Philly.
Yep.
I It's annoying that the one Phillies game that I've been to this season, it was like the one game that they lost in like a 12 game stretch. They won every single game besides the one that I
Oh,
went to.
yeah, they had a great run for a while there.
Yeah, it was. I mean, they're still good. Just like injuries and stuff are piling up, but
Yeah,
it's still fun. But that is those are all the questions that I had coming into it. Once again, thank you so
sure.
much for your time. I hope we can do it again sometime as more changes happen in the gambling landscape.
Anytime you need me, just let me know.
Thank you guys for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.